Good evening, everybody. Oh, you can make more noise than that. Good evening. Good evening. Oh, man, much better. Well, we want to introduce ourselves in just a moment, but we always like to try to find out where you guys are from and that sort of thing. So I know most of the time there's more than one group here. So somebody want to hold up your hand and tell us where from? I may have to bring the microphone out in the audience. Depends on how many Harleys go by tonight. Now tell me that again. Zeeland, Michigan. Is that right? Yeah. Who is from Zeeland, Michigan? All right, guys. Now where else? Jackson, Michigan. Where is that? I mean, bless your hearts, guys.
Maybe you should ask who's not from Michigan.
Oh, man, lots of folks. Surprise. Where are you from, guys?
Iowa.
What part?
Cedar Rapids.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Who are? Oh, man. That's all the way on the other side of Letcher County, isn't it? Now, where else? We got anybody from somewhere else? Elgin, Illinois. Is that New Zealand.
Right here.
Is that right?
Yeah.
You came a long way to see us.
Now, what are you doing here? Yeah. We have an ag project here in the county. And we're raising Bora meat goats, and a lot of them come from New Zealand. Are you familiar with them? Yeah. Well, did I miss anybody? Okay. Well, welcome, guys. We are really glad to get to be here and to share with you tonight. My name is Doc Frazier.
And I'm Clyde Stanley.
And, of course, we're your entertainment for tonight. And Clyde and I are going to do our very best to share a little bit of our culture with you tonight. We have our musical performance is called Stonega Run. And for us, this little project begins if you go out on the west side of Whitesburg County seat, about 6 miles out on the 2-lane road. Eventually you come to a right-handed turn that goes down into a gravel road, and you follow that for about a mile, and that gravel road goes down into the creek bed where the road has always been. And there, when you start down in that hollow, there's a historical marker. It says early settlers began to settle in this beautiful, fertile valley around 18 and 16. It says they were deeply religious, God-fearing people, and they named this beautiful, fertile valley from the Lord's Prayer and called it Kingdom Come. So Clyde and I are going to do our very best to take you from Kingdom Come Creek across Pine Mountain, which is the second highest place in the state of Kentucky, down the south side across the Cumberland River through the valley of Eola, across Black Mountain, the first highest place in the state of Kentucky, down into Stonega, Virginia. Because when the early settlers began to settle down into this part of Letcher County, back over in Stonega was the nearest railhead. Anything they couldn't raise or make for themselves meant this wagon trip from all over the region over into Stonega. And so, again, Clyde and I are going to share with you people, places, and things along this Stonega Run, beginning with this first song called Stonega Run. Rising sun, rise, the day's begun. Will I jump out of bed when the rooster crows? Hitch up the team, ready to roll. Must be 100 miles ahead. Steve North slow, Pine Mountain. It'll feel right. Willow Black Mountain lies out in front. Virginia lines on the top. Stonega on the other side. The Railhead Depot, that's where I ride. For me, my wife, my kids, my family, lots of friends along the way, plenty of places I can stay, a 2-horse team and a 4-ton load, 1,000 miles of bed dirt road, step of goods on the wagon, get down the hill with trays of dragon. 2-horse team and a 4-ton load, miles and miles of bad dirt road, miles and miles of bad dirt road. And I've got miles and miles of bad dirt road. Buddy Clyde Stanley on lead guitar.
Thank you.
Well, y'all, Clyde and I have been gathering oral histories from folks from this along this Stonega run for 20 some odd years. Now, we don't document the authenticity of these stories. We just simply share what was shared with us.
True story.
So, you know, we heard about a guy when the area was first being settled. You know, there wasn't any churches around. He realized the need for a church. He felt led to preach, and he found a place where they could hold their services, you know, and he got out into the community and got to inviting everybody to come go to church with him. And man, he had his sermon ready and he was all fired up, and the first Sunday came along and no one came. But he wasn't discouraged. Next week, he just went back out into the community, inviting people to come again. And again, he worked hard, inviting people from all throughout the area to come. And Sunday came along, and again, he was all fired up and ready to go. And he came down to church, and just one little old farmer showed up. Pastor said, well, I'm really not sure what to do. And the farmer said, now, brother, I don't know anything about preaching. But now, when I come out to feed the cattle and just one old cow shows up, he said, I feed it. Pastor said, brother, that makes a lot of sense. And so he just stood up and preached his heart out. And when he'd finished, he walked to the back of the church, and the little farmer came down the aisle, and he said, well, what do you think? And he said, well, like I said, don't know anything about preaching, but now when I go out to feed the cows and just one old cow shows up, he said, I don't give them the whole load.
True story.
Clyde and I are going to do our very, very best tonight. Give you guys the whole load. Well, Kingdom Come Creek is a beautiful place, and everybody that lived in the region would make their way through Kingdom Come Creek because of the first obstacle that they had to overcome. The first thing that was in front of them there out of Kingdom Come Creek is Pine Mountain. Pine Mountain's a very special mountain. It's the longest mountain in the Cumberland Plateau. It runs for 120 miles from the Breaks Interstate Park out into Williamsburg, Kentucky. And it lies on a fault line, and the north side of the mountain's been shoved up, and so it's really cliffy. And there's just a few natural passageways across the mountain. And there in the head of Kingdom Come Creek was one of those natural passageways. So everybody throughout the region making their way to Stonega would come up through Kingdom Come Creek. They come up through Kingdom Come Creek, and they come into this place, and you can see Pine Mountain. It runs out like this, and then it takes a big dip like this. And there's a historical marker there. And it says that the early settlers probably followed Indian and buffalo trails as they made their way out of the Carolinas and the Virginias into this area. And it's named by the Cherokee people. It's called Scuttle Hole Gap. It means deep gorge in the cliff. And down in Kingdom Come Creek, the post office, until 1973 when the post office was closed, was called Oskaloosa, and that also is a Cherokee word. It means the last of the beautiful. So if you can imagine, those folks making their way over to Stonega would come up through the last of the beautiful, through Kingdom Come Creek, through Oskaloosa. They'd come up and cross Pine Mountain to the Scuttle Hole Gap, down the south side of the mountain and across the Cumberland River, and it opens up into a huge open valley with a beautiful stream of water flowing down it. And that community too is named by the Cherokee people. It's called Eola, and it means Valley of the Winds. In the valley of the winds, the shaman's calling. The spirits of the Cherokee back home. Hear their voices in the waters falling, whispering secrets of centuries now gone. The sky watching o'er you is your father. Your mother hums the rhythms of the earth, and every living thing here is your brother. It's creation, it's passing and rebirth. The great creator must have smiled, placing breezes o'er the wild, placed them at the feet of Kentucky's highest peak. Eola, you are still the valley of the wind. No more need you wander restless. Wake up in the valley at the dawn. Side by side with those who hear the message, whose destiny and purpose are now one. The great creator must have smiled, placing breezes o'er the wild, placed them at the feet of Kentucky's highest place them seat of Kentucky's highest peak. Deola, you are still valley of the wind.
Stop praying.
Well, we heard that later on, this same little preacher, he got discouraged with his church. After all that effort of getting folks to come, he got discouraged with them. And one Sunday morning came around, and he decided he just wasn't even going to go down there that day. And turns out it was bear hunting season, so he just picked up his gun and went out into the woods and decided he'd just bear hunt all day. Spent all day out in the woods, hadn't seen anything anywhere. Late in the evening, he was coming down the ridge, on his way back to the house, and looked down into the valley, and he saw that beautiful stream of water flowing down there. Reminded him how thirsty that he was, and so he just took his gun and laid it up against one of the big trees there and began to make his way down toward this stream of water. And buddy, just about the time he got down next to that stream of water, he heard the awfulest sound that he had ever heard. And he turned around to see the biggest black bear he'd ever seen charging right at him. He wheeled around and said, "Father, I know I'm not where I'm supposed to be, and I know I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, but Lord, I pray that you would intervene in this situation and make a Christian of that bear." But buddy, that old bear just stuck out both front feet and came sliding to a stop, raised up on his hind legs and lifted up his hand to heaven. And he said, "Father, I thank you for this meal I'm about to receive."
True story.
Well, in the late 1960s, a black man named Dan Richmond, 1860s, a black man named Dan Richmond and several other black families migrated out of the Carolinas, and they homesteaded in the highest point in the state of Kentucky, on the top of Black Mountain on the Kentucky-Virginia border. You know, these folks who were making their way to Stonega and back, for some of these folks it was a 3 and 4 day trip. There wasn't any hotels and that sort of thing along the way, but there were houses where you knew you could stay. There in the head of Kingdom Come Creek, my grandmother said that my great-grandfather, Bill Ison, had one of those places, and people in the area said that Bill was a good liver and that he was a good farm manager and he could put up people and feed them and put their animals up and take care of them. And that's how it was with Dan. Anybody that was making their way along this Stonega run, they knew that they were welcome to stop and to stay with Dan, that he would be accommodating, that he would put you up and feed you and feed your animals and send you back along your way. And in the process of doing oral histories with folks from Wise County, Virginia, all the way back to Whitesburg, Kentucky, Dan's name came up more than any other name. He was a character that more people remembered in this area, from the area first being settled, than any other particular character. Dan settled in the top of Black Mountain there, and over the years the coal industry came into the area, and Dan, it just turns out the property that he settled on had a coal seam on it, and Dan became a very rich man. And in 1906, Dan signed his will by making an X. So I'm pretty sure he didn't learn how to read or write. And what's interesting about that is the thing most people remembered the most about Dan was his ability to share the message of the gospel. And so we wrote this song about him. It's called Hey Dan. Well, it's 1 o'clock in the morning, the rain is pouring down. Dan called to his family, said, "Guys, we got to cover ground." Took a haul from a crib and the corn that he saved for seed. Headed out for Kentucky, 'cause he had a mind to be free. Well, the folks on Kingdom Come said you was a praying man. Didn't matter about the color of your skin whenever you took the stand. With a voice that ring to the rafters and in. People told me about you, Dan, and you became my friend. Sitting here in the same old room where you sat 100 years ago. Cold rain is pouring down, it's heavy on my soul. Hey Dan, can you help me now? Can you help me understand how it is we all fit in his plan? Sitting here in the same old room where you sat 100 years ago. Cold rain are pouring down, it's heavy on my soul. Hey Dan, can you hear me now? Can you help me understand how it is we all fit in His plan? Sitting here in the same old room where you sat 100 years ago. Cold rain are pouring down, it's heavy on my soul. Hey Dan, can you hear me now? Can you help me understand how it is we all fit in His plan? We got along about the 1920s, the railway made its way into Letcher County. It was the L&N Railroad, the Louisville and Nashville. Man, that was a blessing for the folks who lived here. Of course, it came for the coal and the timber and the natural resources, but along with it, it brought passenger service. And again, that was a tremendous blessing for all the folks who lived in the area. And everything then after that, everything that came in and out of the county, came in and out via the L&N Railroad. Clyde and I heard about this guy who had done really well in the area. And he wanted to build him a house high up on the cliff that overlooked the North Fork of the Kentucky River Valley, because that's where the L&N had made its way in. And he wanted to see all the coal cars and the timber and so forth, and all the passenger cars as the L&N made its way in and out, and he wanted to be able to view that. And he heard about a guy in the area who had a very unusual talent. He could take a blueprint, and from that blueprint, he could tell you exactly how many bricks that it would take to build a house.
True story.
Absolutely. And so he got in contact with him, and he looked at his blueprint, and he told him it's going to take 9,999 bricks to build this house. And that is exactly how many that he ordered. And of course, he came in the L&N Railroad and came up to the place he was going to build at, and they offloaded there. Had to carry him all the way to the top of the cliff, and he hired this guy, contracted him to come and lay all his bricks. And when all the bricks were laid, there was one brick left over. And so to save his reputation, he just took that brick and tossed it right off the cliff.
True story.
That's it. Working on a railroad for $1 a day. Working on a railroad for $1 a day. Working on a railroad for $1 a day. Collect my money, receive my pay. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Tell him I'm gone. You can tell him I'm gone. Right, Clyde? And if he asks you, was I running? If he asks you, was I running? If he asks you, was I running? Tell him I was flying. You can tell him I was flying. And if he asks you, was I laughing? If he asks you, was I laughing? If he asks you, was I laughing? Tell him I was crying. You can tell him I was crying. So take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Tell him I'm gone. You can tell him I'm gone. greenback dollar. I don't want your greenback dollar. I don't want your greenback dollar. Hurts my pride. It hurts my pride. So take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Take this hammer, carry it to the captain. Tell him I'm gone. You can tell him I'm gone. Tell him I'm gone. You can tell him I'm gone. You know those passenger cars, and I know you guys have seen these like on movies and stuff. Two folks get on the train and they're pointed in one direction. The two folks get on directly across from them and they're pointed right back in the opposite direction so that they're looking each other face to face. You guys seen that? Yeah, that's how these passenger cars were. And Clyde and I heard about this lady, and she was a dog lover. And she come down to ride the train into Whitesburg. And how many dog lovers we got here this afternoon? Yeah, what kind you got? A golden retriever. We rarely ever do a show that a golden retriever is not represented. Well, yeah, who had their hand up? Yeah, what you? And that's the other one that's rarely. Who else has got a dog? What do you got? A what? Catahoula hound. Now that's a new one for us. Now where does that come from? Louisiana. What do you do with that dog? Unlike the golden and the lab, because they're very intelligent animals. One more. Who's got a dog? What do you got?
Poodle.
What kind?
Miniature.
Oh, yeah? Well, that is exactly what this lady had. And you probably know all about this. They're sensitive little dogs. They are. And she came down to ride the train, you know, and it's those little dogs that, they paint their toenails pink.
They tie ribbons in their ears.
Yeah, one of those kinds of things. Well, she came down to ride the train into Whitesburg, and she got on the train, and she's pointed in one direction, and a young man gets on the train, and he's pointed back in the opposite direction, and he's smoking a cigar. And I don't know if you guys have been exposed to that or not, but that cigar smoke is some thick, ugly stuff. And that sensitive little dog was there in her lap, and that old guy was smoking that old cigar, and that old thick cigar smoke was swirling and twirling and coming over and getting in that sensitive little dog's little nose. And every now and then he'd just raise up his little head and he'd go, you know, like that. And finally she could stand it no longer, and she said, "No, sir, excuse me, but that cigar smoke is irritating my dog, and I truly appreciate it if you put it down." He said, "Lady, the best thing for you, just put your dog out." Being a nice Eastern Kentucky lady, she let that slide for a little while. But that old thick ugly smoke just kept swirling and twirling and coming over and getting in that sensitive dog's little nose, and he just kept raising up that little head and going, you know, like that. And finally she could stand it no longer, and she said, "Now, sir, if you won't put your cigar out, I'm going to reach over and grab it from your mouth and sling it right out the window." He said, "Yes, ma'am, and when you do, I'm going to reach over and grab your little dog and sling him right out the window." No other words said. She reached over, grabbed that cigar, and out the window it went. He reached over and grabbed that little dog and slung it right out the window. Fortunately, it had a leash on. And she caught it just in time and came pulling it back in to the passenger car, and guess what it had in its mouth? Actually, they were going under the cliff where they got through the brick off a while ago.
True story.
Oh, listen, one of the reasons you guys are here is because our area really only has one industry, and that's the coal mining industry. And although we produce more coal each year than the year before, we do that because of technology, and also because of technology, we employ fewer and fewer people in order to produce more and more coal. And so as far as the labor force is concerned, the coal business is declining. The little L&N Railroad has long since been purchased by the CS and X Railway, and it's gone. And Gene Ritchie wrote a wonderful song about the decline of the coal business, and it's called "The L&N Don't Stop Here Anymore." Well, when I was a curly-headed baby, son, go to school and learn your letters. Don't you be an old coal miner like me. But I was born and raised in the mouth of a hazard holler. Coal cars rumbling and roaring around my door. Every now and then standing a rusty roll all empty, and the yelling and don't stop here. Well, I used to think my daddy was a black man with script enough to buy the governor's store. Even now he walks downtown with empty pockets and a face as white as February snow. I was born and raised in the mouth of a hazard holler. Coal cars rumbling and roaring around my door. Every now they stand in a rusty roll all empty, and the yelling in don't stop here anymore. Well, last night I dreamed I went down to the office to get my payday like I've done before. Them old country vines that covered up the door, all the trees and grass that growed up to the floor. I was born and raised in the mouth of a hazard holler. Coal cars rumbling and roaring around my door. Every now and stand in a rusty roll all empty, and the yelling in don't stop here anymore. Well, I never thought I'd learn to love the coal dust. Never thought I'd pray to hear the timber roll. Oh, how I wish that grass would turn to money and the greenbacks fill my pockets once more. I was born and raised in the mouth of a hazard holler. Coal cars rumbling and roaring around my door. Every now and then stand in a rusty roll all empty, and the yelling in don't stop here anymore. Yelling in don't stop here anymore. Brother, did they use up all the hot water and you had to wait on it, brother? Oh, man. Well, you know, my grandmother raised on the head of Kingdom Come Creek in the place my great-grandfather, Bill Ison, built, my great-grandfather. And, you know, she said it was so exciting for them because, you know, they didn't have radio and television and all that. So all the news of the world and all the news of the nation and all the news of their friends and neighbors came by those people that were making their way back and forth to Stonega and back. Sometimes they would bring newspaper with them, but most of the time it was just oral stories that they were sharing. And at the end of the day, when all the work was done, they'd gather into the living rooms, you know, and they'd share all these stories about what was going on all over the place. And eventually those stories would run out and they'd just get to telling big tales. And my grandmother grew up in that environment. She was a tremendous storyteller. And my favorite story that she would share was a story about Jack, who was Harley Davidson, right? No. No, Jack was a fiddle player, and he had, in her words, two big fine dogs. Two big lop-eared hound dogs. Maybe the kind you had. Named Diamond and Die. Now, Jack had a very unusual way of calling his dogs. When he wanted them to come in, he'd jerk up his fiddle, and he'd go like this. Whoopie Diamond, whoopie Die. Come about this old man by and by. Are you waving at, Clyde? Listen, Clyde and I want to share this with you guys, but we need some audience participation, okay? So, guys, I want all y'all, if you'll help me, we'll be Diamond and Die, and on my cue, we'll go roof, 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 roof kind of thing, okay? Let's try one. Oh, good deal.
Okay, girls. And in this story, there's two mean, big-mouth panthers. And a panther sounds like this. Oh! So, girls, much louder than them old dogs, we're going to go. Oh! Them old dogs is in trouble.
We're slow, but we'll come on, brother. Well, here we go. One time about 100 years ago, way over in the head of Kingdom Come Creek, lived a man named Jack. Now, Jack's favorite thing in all the world was to walk through the woods, play his fiddle, hang out with his best old buddies, those old lop-eared hound dogs named Diamond and Di. Now, one beautiful sunshiny morning, old Jack got up, looked out the window, and said, man, I'm going to spend the day out in the woods today. He got over by the cook stove and fixed him up some of them big old cat head biscuits and fried up some of that homegrown sausage and had enough left over he could put in his knapsack, take with him for later on in the day. Jack got all of his stuff together, and the last thing he did before he walked out onto the porch was reached up on the wall and took down his fiddle. He walked out onto the porch and looked around, didn't see them dogs anywhere, so he just picked that fiddle up. Whoopie-diamond, whoopie-di, come about this old man by and by. No, Jack listened. Sure enough, he could hear him. They were out running rabbits. That was Diamond and Di's next most favorite thing to do. But Jack said, that's okay. I'll just kind of go ahead and start out in the woods, and I'll find a good place and call them again. And y'all look around here. When you start out in the woods in eastern Kentucky, you start up in the woods too. And that's how it was for old Jack. And he started out in the woods and up in the woods, and he found a good place, and he got that fiddle down. Whoopie-diamond, whoopie-di, come about this old man by and by. No, Jack listened. Sure enough, he could still hear him. Yeah, that was another thing about Diamond and Di. They were pretty persistent. Good dog over there, brother. I like that. We need more of that. They were pretty persistent. Jack said, no problem. They'll be along in a little while. I'll just go a little further out in the woods, a little higher up on the hill, and find a good place and call them again. So sure enough, old Jackie went a little further out in the woods, a little higher up on the hill, and he found a good place, and he got that fiddle down. Whoopie-diamond, whoopie-di, come about this old man by and by. No, Jack listened, no dogs. But what he did hear, man, way off out there in the distance, he heard them old big mouth panthers, buddy. Man, but Jack knew his old buddies would be along in a little while. He said, no problem. I'll just go a little farther out in the woods, a little higher up on the hill, and find a good place and call them again. So Jack went a little further out in the woods, a little higher up on the hill, and he found a good place. He got that old fiddle down. Whoopie-diamond, whoopie-di, come about this old man by and by. Old Jack listened, still no dogs, but what he did hear, man, them old panthers was getting closer and closer. Turned out, girls, them panthers liked a little fiddle playing too. Smell of Jack's lunch wasn't hurting anything. Jack was really starting to get concerned, but he knew the faithfulness of his old friends. They'd be along in just a little while. Jack said, maybe I'll just go a little further out in the woods and a little higher up on the hill and call him again. So sure enough, he went just a little farther out in the woods and a little higher up on the hill, and he got that old fiddle down. Whoopie-diamond, whoopie-di, come about this old man by and by. No, Jack listened, sure enough, buddy. Yeah, the sound he wanted to hear. His old buddies were on the way, but man, those old panthers was coming on like everything. Jack was listening, his old buddies, they were coming, but Jack got to realizing those old panthers was going to arrive on the scene before Diamond and Di did, and he got to looking around. He knew he was going to have to do something. He looked down over the hill and he saw a great big tree, but he took off just as hard as he could go right down toward that big tree. Got down there to that big tree, buddy, started climbing right up it. That big tree had a big limb running out on it. No, Jack, he took off right out that big limb. And then he got that fiddle down. Whoopie-diamond, whoopie-di, come about this old man by and by. No, Jack's listening, sure enough. Old Diamond Di was almost there, but those old panthers was right on his heels. He's listening to his old buddies. They were almost there, but sure enough, those panthers had beat the dogs to the tree. They come down next to that big tree, buddy, and they just got to going right around and around that big tree. They was a gnawing and a clawing and a digging. Old Jack was a listening and his buddies. They was almost there, but About that time, old Diamond and Di arrived on the scene, tore into them Panthers, buddy, and the Panther hair went to flying everywhere. And the last thing Jack heard is they went out of sight. Come about the soul well, Jack grabbed his fiddle, he was headed out for the wood. The sun was a-shining, oh, Jack was feeling pretty good. The wood could landed right, just stepping in time, clear on his mind for the day. He Diamond and he Di were his friends. Two long-beard hound dogs that would follow Jack to the end. They would bark and they'd run, just having some fun, till Jack's fiddle called him in. Whoopie Diamond, whoopie Di. Here come back the soul man by and by. Whoopie Diamond, whoopie Di. Here come back the soul man by and by. Jack was a rambling, playing the fiddle, having fun. The dogs hadn't heard him, so they still hadn't gone. He forgot about the time in the darkness of the pines, until he heard the hungry panthers cry. So Jack began to run, 'cause the dogs hadn't gone. He knew that the time was nigh. He climbed up a tree, set that fiddle free. Candy call for Diamond and Di. And even now they say, down Kingdom Come way, old Jack sits on top of that tree. And every now and then, if you listen close, my friend, you can hear Jack call out for those dogs. Here come about the soul man by and by. Whoopie Diamond, whoopie Di. Here come about the soul man by and by. Whoopie Diamond, whoopie Di. Here come about the soul man by and by. Whoopie Diamond, whoopie Di. Here come about the soul man by and by. Well, now, my buddy Clyde, he's a dog lover. He's got a lab, by the way. But he was a little inexperienced, you know, and hadn't had his dog long, didn't know too much about it, and brought his dog down to the vet and come running into the vet and said, "Man, there's something wrong with my dog." And the vet looked at Clyde and said, "Well, what seems to be the problem?" And Clyde said, "It's been 2 days since my dog has moved." The vet said, "Yes, sir, brother, that's a problem." He said, "Bring him in here and let's see what we can do." So Clyde went out and got him, brought him in, took him into the examining room. The vet tried everything he knew to try to get some kind of response from Clyde's dog. Could get absolutely no response. And so finally, as a last resort, he reached up in one of the cages there above where he's working, and he took out a beautiful little calico kitten, and He brought it down and put it in front of Clyde's dog's nose, and he passed it back many, many times in front of Clyde's dog's nose. And finally he just had to look at Clyde and say, "I'm sorry, buddy, but your dog's dead." And for all you guys who held your hands up and said you're dog lovers, you know this part is a true story. That was not the worst part. They walked out into the office, and the vet began to write out his bill. Clyde looked at him. Clyde looked at that and said, "Buddy, $350 just to tell me that my dog is dead?" He said, "Well, Clyde, it was $50 for the office call and $300 for the CAT scan."
True story.
Kingdom Come Creek's just a little bit bigger than Goose Creek where you guys are staying up there. And it's 6 miles from the North Fork of the Kentucky River to the head of Kingdom Come Creek. Now, when the folks first started settling down in that area, they were agricultural based. They grew most of what they needed, made most of what they needed. And of course, anything they couldn't raise or grow meant that trip to Stonega. But you know, one of the things that's hard to raise out on the farm is money. But some other folks, I know about that too. But they'd overcome that. On the land was the virgin timber. My grandmother has a picture of Drew Frazier, and he's just cut down a tree. And he's standing there leaning against this tree, and the tree is way on up there taller than he is. And what they would do is all summer long they would farm. And all winter long, they would cut these trees. They would drag them down in next to the stream bank. Each man in the community would drag his trees down next to the property that he owned. And in the late part of the winter, the men of the community would get together, go up into the head of the creek, put the first man's trees in the creek when the spring tide come, burst the splash dam, move them down to the next man's place until they worked all those trees down into the North Fork of Kentucky River. There they would assemble rafts, and their friends would follow along and bring all the horses, and they would float them all the way to the state capital to Frankfort to market to generate the money that they needed to buy the things that they bought at Stonega. So it's a pretty good feat of engineering. Now, you know, this is a true story. How did one man tell his trees from another man's trees? Every man had a mark that was registered to him at the courthouse. They didn't have a stock law, meaning they didn't fence their animals in. All the animals just ran loose. And so a man could identify whatever belonged to him. For example, he'd have three slits and a notch, and that would be his mark. And he could mark whatever belonged to him. He'd mark his cows and his horses, his pigs and his sheep and goats and his women. Nah, he didn't do that to his horses. No, honestly, a man could mark his trees. That way he could identify what truly belonged to him when he got them to market. So a pretty good feat of engineering. The water was a very important part of the settling of the area. But living in these steep mountains and narrow valleys were very prone to flash flooding. And in 1927, this whole region experienced a tremendous bad flood. And as doing the oral histories with the folks in Kingdom Come, folks said that Kingdom Come never was quite as beautiful afterwards as it was before. Many farms were washed away, many houses washed away, many people lost their lives. And this song tells that story pretty good. It's called Muddy Water. Mary grabbed the baby, the river's rising. Oh, muddy water's taking back the lair. Old frame house, she won't take one more beating. There ain't no use to try and make a stand. Now the morning light showed the water in the valley. Daddy's grave just swam below the line. There's things to say, but you can't take them with you. But we'll swallow all you leave behind. But I won't be back to start again all over, because what I felt before is gone. Mary grabbed the baby, the river's rising. Muddy water's taking back my home. Where the road is gone, there's only one way to leave. Turn my back on all that's left below, all the shifting lands and the broken farms around me. Oh, muddy waters changing all I know, and I won't be back to start again all over, because what I felt before is gone. Mary grabbed the baby, the river's rising, muddy waters taking back my home. Where the road is gone, there's only one way to leave. Turn my back on all that's left below, all the shifting lands and the broken farms around me. Oh, muddy waters changing all I know. Yeah, muddy waters changing all I know. Brother Clyde on guitar. Thank you. Well, I am a very, very blessed man in so many ways, but one of them is that I live on that piece of property down in Kingdom Come Creek that my great-grandfather Bill Ison built the original part of the house in 1883. It sits on 190 acres of prime eastern Kentucky mountainside real estate, and it's a beautiful place. My nearest neighbor down the holler from me is a mile. So me and my Labrador Retriever, and I have a Golden Retriever as well, we roam free there on the head of Kingdom Come Creek. I was doing one of the oral histories with my great aunt Osie Ison, who lived there before me. And she was telling me at the time of the interview that she had lived on this same piece of land with the same man for the last 50 years. And that was about 7 years after he had passed away. And he was buried in a family cemetery on a ridge that overlooks the home site, which is a very typical Eastern Kentucky thing to do. And every day, as long as she was physically able, she would make her way up the winding little trail that led up to that graveyard and spend some time at his gravesite in the evenings. And that song, that story inspired this song from Miss Jenny Collins and Clyde and myself called Wait for the Sun. Every night I wait for the sun, and here all alone I hear him when he comes, feeling so blue and all alone. No one is true. She said when she left, she wouldn't really be gone. She said I could feel her in the warmth of the sun. Warm in my body like she used to do when the sun don't shine. What will I do? She said to remember all the good times we've had, all the years of good loving. I could never be sad. Bittersweet memories fill up my mind. so blue and visit your grave at the end of the day. Time we spent together before you went away. Brush back the leaves the way you used to your hair when you were in my arms. Felt so good there. So every night, oh night, I wait for the sun. And here all alone, him when he comes. Every night, all night, I wait for the sun. Here all alone, him when he comes. Every night, every night, every night, I'm all I'm not sure how long Clyde and I have been working together. I just know that when we first started, Pine Mountain was only 3 feet tall.
True story.
Absolutely. We've been doing this for a long time, and we've really been blessed. We recorded the Stonega Run CD in 1996, and we hired a promoter in Nashville, and our project played all over the United States.
In Canada.
True story. And for a period of time, Clyde and I drew royalty checks from Radio Airplane. Little bitty royalty checks from
True story.
And so far we sold less than 1 million copies. Considerably less than 1 million copies.
True story.
No, we've been very blessed. We've sold these to people all over the country, and we have these with us tonight. And if you'd be interested in one, we'd surely be interested in selling it to you. And so if you want to come up and listen, if you're not interested in one, just want to come up and hang out with us, we'd love that just as well. Come up and see us up here after the show. Guys, thank you so much for letting us be a part of your activity.
And not throwing anything at us.
Clyde and I have played every kind of environment you could ever hope to play. We used to tour Kentucky State Parks, and when we released our album way back before the mountain grew up, we used to work the colleges in the area. And of course, we worked the festivals, and we worked a goat roping once.
True story.
Absolutely. But our favorite show that we ever did was down in Lexington, Kentucky, because we got to spend the night in the hotel.
Because we usually don't generate enough cash to afford to stay in a hotel.
True story. But we did that time when we were down there, and we spent the night in the hotel. And the next day we're out running around town, because everywhere we go we have to go do that. And I'll tell you why. I hadn't told you this yet, but my buddy Clyde, he owns Hometown Music in the Walmart Shopping Center. So for all your musical needs, come and see Clyde Stanley.
He does that good.
And he makes me do it. This is a true story. Everywhere we go, we have to go check out the music stores. And you know why, guys? So all the way back to Whitesburg, Clyde can tell me how much better his story is than the one we just saw.
True story.
And that's what we were doing. Anyway, Clyde walked up from behind the car there, and he said, "Buddy, I left my boots back at the hotel room." And sure enough, he had. And so we went back to the hotel and walked up to the clerk and told her what our problem was. And she said, "Boys, I'd like to help you all out, but I just rented that to some newlyweds, and I promised I wouldn't disturb them." Now, you guys already got it figured out. Clyde has a solution for every problem.
True story.
He looked at her and he said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it." And right down the hallway we went, buddy. Just about the time we got up to the door, we heard this voice say, "Whose little eyes are those?" And then we heard another voice say,
"Why, they're yours."
And he said, "And whose little nose is that?
It's yours.
And whose little mouth is that?"
It's yours.
We just lingered. No, about that time, old Clyde just reached up and hollered right through the door and said, "Hey, buddy, when you get down to her boots, they belong to me."
True story.
Absolutely. Clyde and I, we used to have a 5-piece band. And we worked hard. One time in a 14-day stretch, we had done 17 shows, and that is a true story. And over on the 4th of July in Harlan County, we had done a show in the city park, and we were to be in Perry County at the state park and set up and do our show right before the fireworks. So when we finished up the show in Harlan County, we loaded up all of our stuff, had all the guys in the van, and we took off as hard as we could go for the state park down in Perry County. And it's out in the middle of nowhere. And we were coming down this 2-lane road, and the train come up beside of us. And when it did, I just shot the gas to the old van, you know, and the guy who used to play bass for us was sitting over in the passenger side, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm going to beat that train to the crossing down here." And buddy, the further the faster down through there, and then about that time we all began to realize we wasn't going to beat that train to the crossing. And buddy, everybody started getting tense, and I just locked up the brakes on that old van, and he come sliding down through there and stopped. And y'all, it wasn't that far from where the train came whizzing right in front of us. And you know how when you slide your tires like that old blue smoke off the tires comes up all around the vehicle, you know, and that old blue smoke was coming up around the vehicle. And I looked over at the guy who used to play bass for us, and I said, "Do you smell that?" And he said, "I reckon so. I'm sitting in it, ain't I?" True story. That's when Clyde and I became a 2-piece band.
That is a true story.
Oh, man. Well, listen, guys. We sure enjoy sharing our true stories and some of that other stuff. True story. But the thing that Clyde and I have experienced that's been the greatest blessing in our lives, and the thing that has been the greatest fellowship that we shared in all these years of playing music, is that along this way, both of us have come to know the Lord Jesus Christ as our personal Lord and Savior. Amen. Amen. Praise the Lord. Amen. That's the best thing that ever happened to anybody. I'm sure you know. And that's the best thing that ever happened to us. And so
Let me tell you about a man I know from over on Common River Way. A coal miner and a farmer too, a hard-working man they say. He fed the chickens and he gathered the eggs, pulled the corn and he picked the beans. But all the work that he had to do wasn't done by any means, because sometimes when the time was right, see him sneaking out at night, gonna make another batch of that stuff. Yellow moonshine galley way. John was a hoeing his taters when the sheriff came up to his house. Said, there's a rumor that you got a steal. We've come here just to check it out. Moonshine said, if you find that steal, looked at the sheriff and he gave a big grin. Bring us both down a big swallow, cause we'll be powerful thirsty by then. Making moonshine back in old Pine Mountain, where the limestone water runs, some for medicine and some to sell. I drank or two just to have some fun, cause sometimes when the time was right, you see him sneaking out at night, gonna make another batch of that stuff full of moonshine.